Alright, I've got my painting kit and I'm going to go for a walk to a location. And when I get there I'm going to talk about plein air painting and a movement in art called Impressionism.
One gal watched the boiler, the other watched the smell, and Mama corked bottles when old Dooley fetched them out. Dooley slipping up the holler, Dooley trying to make a dollar. Dooley, give me a smaller and I'll pay you back someday. And I'll pay you back someday. I remember very well the day old Dooley died. The women folk looked sorry and the men stood around and cried. Now Dooley's on the mountain, he lies there all alone. They put a jug beside him and a barrel for a stone. Dooley slipping up the holler, Dooley trying to make a dollar. Dooley, give me a smaller and I'll pay you back someday. And I'll pay you back someday.
Alright, so that's Bud Inlet, and that's a painting of Bud Inlet. And this is a practice known as plein air painting. I want to talk about three different things that are related to plein air painting that are of significance. The first one is the notion of invention, of how art is influenced by invention. And that comes to us in the form of a paint tube. So this is a flexible metal tube. You can open it at the back and you can fill it with paint, in this case oil paint, which is pigment ground with linseed oil generally. And then you can crimp the edges and you can put a cap on it, and this can be transported out into the field, much as I've done, in order to create a painting on location. This was invented in the 1840s, and it was invented by an American who was in England, and it built upon other inventions as well. But it really was a great invention for providing artists a clean way to bring colors out into nature and try and represent what they see. Along with the tube itself, which helped keep things clean, the pigments themselves that go inside of there were expanding for the time. The chemicals were being synthesized in laboratories, and milling techniques were better and better, and so we could get some very high quality pure colors to fill those wonderful tubes. And the work could be taken out into a setting like this. The second thing I want to talk about related to plein air painting is the notion of time in relation to art. And these representations are generally done quickly. They may take 6 months of work with different sittings, or they could take as quick as 2 or 3 sittings, or even 1 day sitting to accomplish the painting. But regardless of how quickly they're done, there's a constant change that happens of the subject matter, of what's being represented, of what's being referenced. And so that change, that light, the weather, all of that kind of gets recorded into one static image. And then the last third thing that I want to talk about is the movement, the historical movement of Impressionism that took this practice as a habit of creating fine works of art. And we know of Impressionism through museum collections all over the world and multiple reproductions. And artists such as Monet and Renoir and Pissarro, they're household names. And this method of this style called Impressionism developed at that time in the late 1800s, late 19th century. And there were other components to it than just the paint tube being a really nice flexible tube and a wonderfully crafted box easel that allows us to transport the paint materials. But there was this movement that happened of these artists using these bright, wonderful paints and applying them in certain ways. And typically we see this Impressionism as being dabs of high chroma paint, highly saturated paint, sitting next to one another or with the space of the ground beneath those dots of paint. And those different colors of paint optically mix, and which is different than when a color is blended together. And so that visual charge of those optically mixing colors, the bright new colors, they created a sensation, and the habit facilitated by this method of plein air painting.